Hi everyone, thanks for joining me once again for another round of stories here on Thailand Bound. Okay, before I get into the stories, I just want to respond to a comment that was left this morning. This comment will be a week ago by the time you actually watch this upload. As I always say, I do the uploads a week in advance. But there was a guy left a comment, he said, oh, the stories were terrible this week, waste of time. The word he used was actually crap. And, you know, at the end of the day, the thing is, if you don't like the stories, it's probably better time for you to move on. I do put timestamps in the description, so if you start to listen to a story and you think this story isn't very interesting, it's not for me, you can actually go forward to the next timestamp and that will take you to the beginning of the video. And as these stories are sent in by people, they're not made up, they're sent in by individuals, by people who have come and visited the kingdom, and it's their experiences. I don't vet them, you know, maybe for bad language and, you know, if they're talking about too much about the aerobics and stuff like that, but I don't vet them and think, well, this is a good one, this is a bad one. I just read everyone out that gets sent in to me. So as I said, if it's not for you, just move on to the next one. But I'm not really interested in comments that they were boring or something like that, because I can't really do a lot about it. Okay, right, these stories are good this week, I can guarantee that. Let's get into story number one.
สวัสดีค่ะ
I would like to say that all I hear about most of the time is all bar girls, etc., are only after money and what they can get out of you. Even though that this is true up to a certain point, my experience over the last 20 years has been a good one. I find if you take care of the girls and treat them with respect, I find they are always happy with that. So my story starts in May 2023. I came to Pattaya for a couple of weeks, had a good time and made some new friends that I'm still in contact with that also live in the UK. The last 3 days in Pattaya I felt really ill, and it still took me another week to get over it when I had got to the UK. The girl I met on the day that I fell ill, named Pip, I will attach a photo. Even though she looks young, she's actually 34. That's because she has only been working in the bar for a little while, and the hard life of a bar girl with all the drinking, etc., had not yet taken its toll on her. Anyway, back to my story. The first night we were together, we had the normal bedroom fun, which was very good. However, during the night, I came over all funny, feeling sick and shivering and lightheaded. I struggled through to the morning, but I was feeling worse. I struggled to get out of bed. I remember thinking at the time I must have had a very rough night while out in the bars. And all I needed was a good breakfast, some exercise, fresh air, and I would feel right as rain again. After breakfast, we did some shopping because I wanted to get some gifts for my family back home. Upon returning to the hotel, I felt really bad, much worse than before. By the time I got back to my room, I was throwing up and having hot flushes. To be honest, I was getting very worried about my condition. Pip offered to go out to a pharmacy as there was one very close to where I was staying. So I gave her some money and asked her to just ask the pharmacy what I should take given my condition. She came back with everything she said I should take, and for the next 6 hours she looked after me, wiping me down with a cold towel, administering the medication and generally taking care of me. I was still feeling very rough and just wanted to curl up in bed and sleep it off. I didn't want to waste Pip's time, so I paid her for her time and the aerobics the night before and told her she should leave and just let me sleep. Pip left and I fell into a deep sleep for about an hour. When I woke up, my head was spinning and I was very worried about my condition. I didn't want to get up at that point. There was a knock at the door. I struggled to get to the door and opened it. But to my surprise, there was Pip with a big bag in hand. She told me that she was worried about me and didn't want to go and work in the bar that night, and she had bought me some hot food. That was what was in the bag she was carrying. If I was totally honest with myself, I would say the sight of Pip standing in the doorway was the best sight I'd seen in a long time. I was on my own, many miles from home, lonely and worried about my condition. Just having company lifted my spirits no end. I couldn't eat very much, but I did manage a couple of mouthfuls. I fell asleep again, and every time I woke up, every few hours or so, there was Pip sitting in the chair next to the bed, wiping me down with a cold towel and holding a cup of water up for me to drink. I honestly don't know how much more difficult my time would have been without her in the room looking after me. She was fantastic. I'm full of respect for her, bar girl or no bar girl. When I was packing to leave for the airport, I noticed I'd left my wallet on the table and my safe was open, which had a considerable amount of money in there. Obviously, I'd fallen asleep, so Pip could have helped herself and made a lot of money, but I knew how much was there. I checked everything and she didn't help herself to 1 penny. She could have easily taken the lot and disappeared. I wouldn't have been able to find her. I was so grateful for having met this girl. I tried to give her money for her time that she had spent with me over the last couple of days, but she wouldn't take it. She just told me that she needed to pay the bar fine for the day she hadn't been there, and that was all she would accept from me. When the time came to leave the hotel, Pip helped me downstairs and into the taxi as I was still feeling weak. I was absolutely mortified to be leaving this girl behind. She was wonderful. When I got back to the UK, it took me several weeks to fully recover. I had taken Pip's line ID, so I was in contact with her regularly. I was so grateful for how she had looked after me. I asked her to send me her bank details. I figured the least I could do was to send her a few thousand baht for looking after me, as she did. I will be returning to Thailand again for 3 weeks in November, but I'm not sure if I'm going to go to Pattaya again. I was a frequent visitor in the bar where I met Pip, so I know the bar owner, who was Thai but spoke very good English. I thought I'd take a gamble. So I texted her because I also had her line ID, and I asked her if I could call her, to which she agreed. I told her the story about Pip and how she had looked after me and been brilliant while with me. I asked her if I could send 10,000 baht to her bank account and then for her to give the money to Pip on my behalf. I knew it was a risk and the bar owner could have simply pocketed the cash, but I had a good feeling about her and I took the gamble. A few days later, Pip video called me from the bar. She was holding the 10,000 baht I had sent her and was waving it about in front of the other girls. She looked so happy, and of course it was massive face in front of the other girls, so she was probably happier about that than actually receiving the cash. My thoughts at the time were, if I'd never met Pip again, the money was not important. What was important was what she had done for me while I was ill, and it made me happy to send her the money. I wasn't expecting anything in return, so to summarise and end this story, I will say this. Yes, it is true that bar girls are out to get as much as they can out of guys coming to Pattaya, but I have seen a kind side of Pattaya bar girls. They can be kind when you're down on your luck or you fall ill like I did. The actions of Pip have completely altered my thinking towards these girls. They work hard for their families, but they're also kind at the same time. Thanks for reading out this story, and I hope you guys get something out of it. So this is something I've heard lots of times before, and I've actually witnessed it with my own eyes. The girls who work in the bar, obviously they're there to make money as much as they can, and they'll scam you if they can get away with it, but they do have a very kind side, and I found that most of the girls that work in the bar do have this kind of kind side that's happened to this guy. I'll tell you just a quick story that happened to a friend of mine. He met this girl in a beer bar, first night in Pattaya. I was with him. He took a girl. I didn't, obviously. And they were getting onto the back of a BART bus. He'd had a few drinks. He was 10 years older than me, actually. He was having a few drinks, and as the BART bus started to go off, he actually fell off the back of the BART bus. You know the step on the back, you can stand there if it's quite busy, and it jolted, and he fell off, and he scraped his leg and his elbow and everything on the road, and the girl that was with him didn't hesitate. She took him to the hospital, sat with him while he received medication and spoke to the doctor and everything. And obviously she went back to the hotel with him after that, but she didn't ask for anything extra. And you will find that a lot of these girls do have a very sympathetic, kind side to them when you're a little bit down on your luck or something's happened to you. Okay, so great little story there, and it does show you the other side of the coin. As the guy said, there's a lot of bad stories about these girls. Right, let's jump into story number 2. I first arrived in Thailand in 1995 as a 25-year-old from the United States. After a wonderful first trip and the culture shock that comes when visiting Thailand, I would come to Thailand every chance I got. Here is a memorable night with a friend who brought me to Thailand a few years later in 1998 named James. James worked in Thailand for an American company and had an apartment in Bangkok off Sukhumvit Road. We both love Thai food, but do enjoy some Western food and Western music every now and then. One of our favourite spots we like to frequent is the Hard Rock Cafe at CM Square. Steak, wine and live music would always be put us in a great mood. On this night, there was a group of Thai girls sitting next to us. Both James and I like to practice our Thai, so I'm sure we said something stupid and incorrect to get their attention. The next thing I know, we are all dancing together in one big group. Now, neither one of us guys can dance worth a lick, but alcohol does a great job of bringing out the I don't care what I look like attitude when pretty ladies are around. After everyone was exhausted from dancing, we invited the girls to James's apartment to continue the night. On a side note, Thailand has totally ruined the Hotel California song for me by the Eagles. Every time I went out, I would hear that song at least 20 times. Back at the apartment, the girls introduced us to the Thai card game, Pok Deng. Both of us playing cards, so they taught us how to play and let the games begin and drinking continue as well. Of course, we both lost, but were having such great time that we didn't care. The one girl I was attracted to was a petite girl named Noi. None of the girls spoke good English, and we both spoke just a little bit of Thai, but that is part of the fun. Noi and I connected and started getting close as the night continued. We both had been constantly drinking, and one thing led to the other, and Noi and I ended up in my room. Now, keep in mind, I'm totally into girls only. I love Thai ladies. We were heavy into the aerobic session and past second base, headed to third, when Noi grabs my hand, looks at me and says, "Noi man." What? What did I hear? Did she say she's a man? My hearing is not great, but Noi once again said, "Noi man." All of a sudden, my head begins to spin and I get really dizzy and I was on the verge of throwing up. I did not know what to say, so I just nodded in confusion. Lying next to Noi, totally deflated after an epic night, Noi now went to sleep and I was in a state of misbelief and I couldn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I told James a story when he got up and I went back to bed when Noi left. Now, James's Thai was better than mine and he had decided he would figure this story out as he too thought Noi was all women. Well, when I woke up, James had this to say. He talked to Noi and Noi said, "Noi men." So men in Thai means for a woman, it was that time of the month. When I got up, James had a big grin on his face and told me that it was that time of the month for Noi and was 100% a woman. We both laughed as this story will be told for years and I was very relieved that Noi was all women. Now in 2023, I still have plenty of misunderstandings with my current wife that usually ends up in a silly argument. How many of your listeners have had a similar situation with a lady or a ladyboy? I am sure many, for your information, not sure if Noi still wanted to have aerobics or not that night, as some girls do and others don't. But with my reaction, she would have thought, oh no, he is horrified that it is that time of the month and it's not going to happen, and we went to sleep. Okay, so little story there. That's one of the things that terrifies some guys when they come out here because unlike other countries around the world, the ladyboys, the guys who are obviously transition into women, they they wear makeup, long hair, boob jobs and all the rest of it, and they are very, very good looking. You can't tell the difference a lot of the time between the women and the ladyboys, and it does terrify some guys that they'll accidentally take one of these ladyboys back to the hotel. You can usually tell the big giveaways are normally the hands are big and the feet are big, and they're always very, very tall. Thai girls tend to be petite, quite small. Okay, right, let's jump into story number 3. I'm a 68-year-old male from the UK and now fully retired. I was married for 35 years and about 10 years ago split up from my wife who divorced me. This was the best thing that happened to me, although not my choice, instigated by my wife, as divorces statistically are started by women. Nothing comes a close parallel to the happiness it was to bring me. I suddenly felt free and answerable to no one. It took a while for things to settle down. The divorce proceedings took many years due to divorce being bitter, but all came good in the end. I'd never been to Thailand or outside of Europe before, but decided to escape the English winter and enjoy my new freedom and travel around Southeast Asia. So in November 2022, after the COVID restrictions ended, I booked a flight to Bangkok with the intention of travelling around neighbouring countries, returning to the UK in the spring. As a solo man, all went very well and I had the time of my life: Philippines, Cambodia and Vietnam. I ended up back in Bangkok, which lined up nicely for my return to the UK. I had taken the decision that I no longer wanted marriage because it's a financial noose around a man's neck, particularly in the West. Anyway, having listened to many of Thailandbound stories and others on YouTube warning me of Thai bar girls techniques, I went alone to a bar in Soi 4 in Bangkok to see for myself. I was forewarned and forearmed, as they say. True to form, I was seated for only about 1 minute when a bar girl approached me and started making conversation. Very pretty and attractive, about 20 years my junior. I found her irresistible. I bought her a lady drink, we got along very well, and I ended up bar-fining her and taking her back to my hotel. The activity in the bedroom was fantastic aerobics like I hadn't had for 30 years, and much, much better. We awoke the following morning, and this is where I let my guard slip because she said I could bar-fine her for a month and that would be cheaper for me. The deal was 5,000 baht for a month's bar fine and 4,000 baht a day for her. She felt so sweet and convincing, I agreed to it. The next month saw us travelling all over Thailand, and having broken the 3-day rule, I fell in love with her. The girls are so manipulative and I was very weak. I realised I was paying her a lot of money for her company, but it seemed worth it to me at the time. It soon became apparent she was the typical bar girl to the T. I was paying for everything: accommodation, food, drink, transport, even a 2 baht piece of squid off the street carts. I bought her an expensive piece of jewellery which she later claimed to have lost. She paid for nothing, and I mean nothing. Later, when I had returned to the UK, I spoke to a Thai friend who said, no, she hasn't lost it. I know Asian girls. I'm one myself. She sold that. I had thought that could be the case, but didn't want to believe it. That was my friend's immediate thought, totally dismissing the fact she could have genuinely lost it. I was messaged on a daily basis after I had returned to the UK from said bar girl, and true to the bar girl form, said, can you send me some money, and pictures of a sick person in a hospital appeared on the messaging app, a bit like the old sick buffalo trick. I guess it was just a matter of time before she was to ask for money, I thought, but I had hoped she would break the true form of a bar girl and not request any money from me. But no, she wanted money. No way was I sending it abroad for her. After many months' emotional trauma and her wanting to marry me back in Thailand, I eventually realised my stupidity, and we parted company with no financial damage to myself, apart from what I had agreed to pay her for her time and company, which in the main I enjoyed. At least I didn't lose a house like some men do. I suppose the moral of my story is I was fully warned, knew the dangers, and I still fell for it. Can you just imagine the financial damage I could have incurred? Marry her or just partner with her and you marry her family. She had 3 children in their 20s of child producing age, could equal 6 future grandchildren, I suppose, and if I was unlucky, could be more. I would be financially ruined. Why oh why do men fall for these girls? And I was warned, eyes fully open. I don't want a relationship with a female friendship, maybe, but no commitment. Females would say typical men, I expect. I understand they're rational to support themselves and to earn money, I get it. They want men to support them, which is fine, like here in the UK in the 1950s, which she didn't have to work as a bar girl. Why not 7-Eleven, for example? But she said she was too old. There must be many jobs out there. Even though not as well paid, it's now put me out of returning to Thailand for fear of an embarrassing accident meeting with said girl. I know Bangkok is a big place, but these girls have a network that would put the FBI to shame. I love Thailand and Southeast Asia, but phew, what a close call. I went into it knowing the dangers, and that annoys me that I could be so stupid. Brains in trousers, I guess. Be warned, guys, if I fell for it, anyone can, and I saw similar men with Thai girls all over the place paying for everything. She caught me, hook, line and sinker. It's a business to these girls, and they are good, very good. My advice, have fun with these girls and abide by the 3-day rule. I would say make it a 24-hour rule, new one every night, and you'll be good to go. The first thing that struck me about that story was the actual fee that he agreed to pay her, 4,000 baht a night. I mean, that's UK prices, that's £100 a night, or probably 120 US dollars. You would have thought he'd got some kind of a discount. You know, if it's a bar, even in Soi 4, the going rate's about 2,000 baht. So if he'd agreed to take her out for a full month, you would have thought, 1,000 baht a night. But, she's obviously, she was clever, manipulated him, and he fell for it. It never fails to amaze me. The other thing is, why do guys do this? Why do they, meet a girl for company for one night and then agree to have her for a month. Why don't they think about it or go back the next night? And the other thing, she was totally lying when she said she was too old to get a job in 7-Eleven. You know, a lot of the girls in 7-Elevens are very young and pretty, but you do see older ones, so that's nonsense. And there are lots of options for girls to work in Bangkok. You know, okay, they're not highly paid jobs if they're not skilled or fully educated, but, you know, they don't have to work in that profession. So that's obviously something she's doing from choice, because she's obviously making a lot more money. 4,000 baht a night, she's making real good money. Right, let's go into our final story for tonight. For today, this is story number 4. Hi Peter, I love your channel and thought I would share a short story about a recent experience in Thailand which your viewers might find interesting. To some people listening to this story as I get into it, it might appear quite unbelievable, but trust me, this actually happened, and if I hadn't seen it firsthand, I might not have believed it myself. I was on one of my many trips to Pattaya recently where I was to stay for just over a month. For anybody who has been to Thailand, they will know you're only alone if you want to be alone. It's much easier to meet friends and acquaintances in Thailand than it is in Europe, for instance. I was staying in a friendly budget hotel on Soi 8, just off the beach road. I would often have a drink before dinner at one of the bars down the street from the hotel where I was staying. The girls were fairly friendly there and it wasn't too expensive. I'd occasionally drop in for a late night drink before going back to the hotel if I was alone. As a consequence, this one bar became my go-to place whenever I felt like a drink and a game of Connect 4. On my third day in Pattaya, I was sitting at said bar when I met a guy who was with a stunning girl. Let's call him Pete. Pete introduced me to the girl who was with him, who I later found out was his girlfriend and named Pun. It just so happened that this same bar was a bar that Pete liked to go to on a regular basis with his girlfriend Pun. Pete and I became very friendly, often sitting at the bar drinking and chatting together while Pun would talk to the girls in the bar. Pete explained that he was semi-retired and spent half of his time in the UK and the other half in Pattaya with his girlfriend. 3 months UK, 3 months Pattaya, 3 months UK, and so on. Pun was one of those girls that would turn most men's heads. Not only was she extremely beautiful and well dressed, but she was taller than your average Thai girl, and your viewers will be happy to hear she was not a ladyboy. I was intrigued and didn't want to come across as nosy and intrusive, but I couldn't help but to ask him where he had met Pun. I suppose, if truth be told, I really wanted to know if she was a bar girl or a regular girl. I remember thinking at the time, if I ever got a shot at that, I would definitely take it. But as it was Pete's girlfriend, I would probably never have the chance, as they were obviously a very tight item. Anyway, Pete went on to tell me that he'd met Pun, who worked in a bank in Bangkok, but that she would always come down to visit him when he was in Pattaya, and they were in a serious relationship, and Pete hoped to marry Pun one day, as he was totally in love with her. At this point in the story, I'll just say I didn't think any more about Pun, other than admiring her beauty every time I seen her. As far as I was concerned, she was off limits. Pete was a friendly enough guy, so I enjoyed talking to him when I met him in the bar. Eventually the three of us became good friends, and I would often go out to dinner by invitation from Pete and his girlfriend. Sometimes Pete would pay the bill, sometimes I would pay the bill. It was just great to have some company sometimes. Anyway, the day finally comes when Pete has to go back to the UK. He tells me he will travel by taxi to Bangkok with Pun. He will fly back to the UK and Pun will go back to work. I never did figure out how she could take 3 months off her job in the bank, but the story goes she was self-employed as a bank advisor, which seemed a little strange to me at the time, but I didn't give it much more thought. The night before Pete was due to leave, I wished him all the best and a safe trip and told Pun it had been great to meet her. We all said our goodbyes and I headed back to the hotel for a good night's sleep. The next couple of nights seemed a little strange not seeing Pete and Pun in the bar. But Pattaya being Pattaya, as I said earlier, you're only alone if you want to be alone, and I soon hooked up with one of the bar girls. About 3 days after this, I had been out to Walking Street and decided to pop into my regular bar in Soi 8 for a couple of beers before calling it a night. Upon arriving at the bars, my eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. I thought to myself, have I drunk too much tonight? I'm seeing things. Pun was at the bar alone. Not only was she at the bar, but she was inside the bar with the rest of the bar girls. Obviously, I was shocked, but also intrigued. I sat down at the bar as close as I could to Pun, not sure on what I should say. Pun immediately comes straight over to me and offers me a Chang beer because she knows that's what I drink, and goes on to ask me if I could buy her a lady's drink. This is really weird. I say, "Can you come out of the bar?" And she says yes. She gets our drinks and sits down next to me. So after having a couple of drinks with Pun, it turns out the story goes something like this. Pun never worked in a bank and was not living in Bangkok. She was from Khon Kaen in Isan. Yes, it is true. Pete was her boyfriend, but unbeknown to Pete, as soon as he got on the aircraft, Pun got on the bus and headed back to Pattaya, where she worked in the bar. She went on to tell me that Pete told everybody that he met her in Bangkok. He would never say he met her in the bar because he figured he had taken her out of the bar so nobody would ever find out. He believed she would head back to her village when he was in the UK, as he was sending her money every month and she didn't really have to work. But the bar girls being bar girls, it's never enough money, and she continued to work at the bar. Whenever Pete returned to Thailand, she would meet him at the airport in Bangkok. They would travel back to Pattaya together and continue the relationship where it had been left off. So now comes a big question. Do I or don't I, and would she? It was a strange feeling because on the one hand I had been good friends with Pete and I felt a certain loyalty to him, but on the other hand I'd always fantasised about Pun, as I thought she was a regular girl. As said, she was truly stunning. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I was actually quite shy to ask her because I'd known her for a while as a normal girl. As it turned out, I didn't have to make any decision because while this was all going through my brain, Pun suddenly says, "I know your hotel is very close. Will you pay my bar fine?" As far as I was concerned, that was it. The deal had been made. Pun had instigated it and I was happy to accept. Needless to say, we had a fantastic night of aerobics, but I did have some guilty feelings running through my head, thinking about Pete in the UK missing his girlfriend, who he thought was in Khon Kaen, and not laying next to me in bed. It doesn't matter how many times I visit Pattaya, the city never fails to amaze me. Stuff goes on there that you just won't see anywhere else in the world. So what do I do the next time when I walk into the bar and Pete is there with Pun? Do I pretend not to see them and go to another bar? No, I just hope my acting skills are as good as Pun's, and I shall carry on as if nothing had happened. As I said at the beginning, this is a strange story that is hard to believe, but honestly, this really happened. Only in Thailand, as they say. It happens a lot more often than people think. There is, there's a lot of guys go to Pattaya and they do fall in love with girls and they take them out of the bar and they pay them a kind of, you could call it a salary to not work. And they're in the belief that when they go back to their own countries, these girls go back to the village and they live off the money that the guy sends them. But as this guy says in the story, it's never enough. If they have the opportunity to make more money, not all, let's not tar everybody with the same brush and say everybody, but a lot of them, most of them I would say, they'll just go straight back to the bar and they'll go off with customers and they'll get money for drinks. So it's not very nice for the guy, but obviously, it's his decision, each person's decision, isn't it? Okay, that's it once again for the stories this week. Thanks for listening. I thought all 4 of those stories were very, very good. I hope you agree with me. Until next Saturday's stories, thanks for listening to me, and I'll catch you real soon.